Mon engagement dans cette campagne était fort.
Vous allez bien? Bonjour, messieurs, dames.
Immensément soulagé. Voyez-vous,
The legislative elections in France have resulted in a complex political scenario. A broad leftist coalition has emerged as the leading force in the National Assembly, securing the most parliamentary seats. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance finished second, with the far-right parties securing a significant increase in their representation, placing third. This outcome leaves no single party with a clear path to majority rule, leading to a hung parliament. The National Assembly, France's pivotal legislative body, requires at least 289 seats for a majority out of its 577 total. The fragmented election results now necessitate unprecedented cross-party collaborations to pass legislation, an approach unfamiliar to modern French politics. Speculations arise around Macron possibly negotiating with moderate left factions to establish a coalition government. But he has explicitly ruled out collaboration with the hard-left France Unbowed party from which Jean-Luc Mélenchon comes from, but said he may seek support from the socialists and Greens. Mélenchon too took a similar stand the moment he saw power shifting in his faction's favor.
We said it already last, and we reiterate this to the President of the Republic. We refuse to enter into negotiations with his party to make wheelings and dealings, especially after having fought relentlessly for 7 years against his policies of social abuse and ecological inaction. The votes of the French people have just confirmed this, especially after the ballot box made them largely disavow.
In the absence of a viable political deal, Macron could also opt for a technocratic government composed of non-partisan experts. However, this too would necessitate parliamentary approval, adding another layer of complexity. The left, particularly the newly formed New Popular Front, is also experiencing internal rifts. Recent disagreements, especially over international conflicts like the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, have exposed ideological divides.
The Constitution gives the President some prerogatives in terms of foreign policy, but it also gives some to the Prime Minister. So both will have to get along in order to, for instance, recognize as soon as possible the state of Palestine.
Despite these tensions, the coalition has proposed progressive measures, such as increasing the minimum wage and reversing Macron's pension reforms. These policies have caused apprehension among financial markets. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has announced his resignation but remains open to serving in an interim capacity during the transitional period.
Tonight, the political faction I represented in this campaign, even though it performed 3 times better than predicted in the last weeks, did not attain a majority. Thus, loyal to the Republican tradition and in tune with my principles, I will hand the President of the Republic my resignation tomorrow morning.
The elections that gave a blow were announced shortly after the far right got a majority of seats in the European Union elections. Macron had defended his decision as the only way to bring clarification, insisting his centrist alliance was best placed to spearhead the fight against the far left and the far right. Macron, a pro-business centrist, said he trusted his fellow citizens to see the difference between expressing anger and building a serious project.
We cannot remain indifferent or deaf to the message that voters sent, and we must offer a democratic response. This response, to me, could not come in the form of a change in government or coalitions that were simply impossible in Parliament, and the last few days have shown this. But it called for a dissolution of Parliament. That alone allows for clarification. We are at a moment when our country faces many challenges and cannot let the extremes stall it, and because it's a show of confidence in our people, our democracy, the Republican spirit, our national common sense. Turning to our sovereign people was, in my opinion, the only Republican choice. We must have concrete answers to your anger, but also a way of doing things that makes you feel more highly regarded, listened to, and active. The answer that I also have for them: you expressed anger on Sunday. Message received loud and clear. I cannot be more solemn and serious. Now, is this anger a solution to your everyday problems? I'm going to say no.
Macron also added that he cannot come to terms with the fact that the far right got almost 40% seats in the EU. This was a shock to the public and his supporters at the time. But now, the election results show that his gamble failed. Macron's office has stated that he will wait for the National Assembly to self-organize before taking further steps. While there is no set deadline for appointing a new Prime Minister, Macron retains some powers over foreign policy, defense, and European affairs, as stipulated by the French Constitution. Despite the legislative impasse, Macron's term continues until 2027, with no constitutional mechanisms to force a presidential resignation or prompt new elections for another year. The political landscape in France remains fluid, with all eyes on how Macron and the newly elected lawmakers navigate this unprecedented situation.